What I'm about to say in this recording, well, I shouldn't have to say it. It should be so obvious for you by now. But I'm not going to take any assumptions. I'm going to say it anyway, just in case. Beware. Beware of looking for final solutions. Let me repeat that one more time. Beware of looking for final solutions. I'll add this scripture to this. You go to Proverbs chapter 14, verse 12. There is a way that which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. And I believe somewhere in Proverbs chapter 20 a similar thing is written, but okay. Proverbs 14, verse 12. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. And there is another scripture I want to add in. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Let me read it again. Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 6. Trust in the Lord. Trust in whom? In the Lord. With all thine heart. With 10%, 50%? No. With all thine heart. And the heart refers to the soul, means your thinking, your feeling. So, okay, well, I may go into that in another video. And lean not unto thy own understanding. Does say lean on your own understanding when it benefits you. Does say lean on your own understanding and then when it fails you go to the Lord. No, it says lean not unto thy own understanding. Verse 6. In all thy ways acknowledge him. Acknowledge whom? The Lord. And he shall direct thy paths. Who shall direct thy paths? He. Who is he? The Lord. So Christ will direct your paths. So what Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 to 6 simply make clear is that you ought to agree with Christ completely. So the way you think about life's issues and about stuff must be Christ-centered 100%. And here's why. A very simple reason why you should agree with Christ 100%. Besides the supernatural power, supernatural protection, besides all of that, there are things, I would say there are outcomes that appear so good, appear so lovely, appear so desirable. But when you look beyond, when you look at the bigger picture, you'll see that it's not that great at all. And here is where a lot of people fail. Here is where even some believers are trapped. They are looking for final solutions to life's challenges. And don't get me wrong here, if there's a challenge, or if there is an issue that needs a solution and you want a long-term solution, so something won't reoccur again, that's good. This is not a complete attitude. I praise that attitude. That attitude is quite, it's quite intelligent, and it's also wise to have such an attitude that you want long-term solutions. But there is a catch here. Too often, people look for solutions just to end something quickly because they're fed up with something. Or they're very tired, or they don't feel like they have the mental and emotional strength to go through a similar thing again. So out of desperation or out of frustration, they want a final solution now. And I'm telling you, beware of that. Beware of looking for final solutions. I'm not saying that you wanting things to be over with, finally, especially if it's an issue that's persistent. I'm not saying that you're wrong in wanting something to be over with. I'm just telling you, beware of looking for final solutions. Why? Because when you are looking for final solutions, your focus is off Christ. And that means you don't look at the bigger picture anymore. Because you're so focused on yourself, on your feelings, on your emotions, on your thinking, on your circumstances, and how people are treating you. So you become the focus, so you lose sight of the bigger picture. When you lose perspective, because you really want something to be over with, you're so annoyed, you're fed up, You're so focused on your own will. And that's a very dangerous place to be, because when you're so focused on your own will, any deception can come near you, and you'll likely give in to any deception on an unconscious level. Because this is how the enemy works. Because the enemy is a conman. He wants you to place your confidence in something you shouldn't place your confidence in. He does not want you to be without confidence. No, the enemy wants you to have confidence, but he wants you to have misplaced confidence. So the enemy, when you're going through a crisis, where the crisis is a divorce, or where the crisis is you're looking for a job but you can't find a job, or where it is you want to switch a job because people at the workplace, well, they're toxic, or where it is you want to find new friends, or I don't know what type of crisis you're going through. I don't. But let's say you're going through a crisis. The enemy pays attention to you when you're going through that crisis. And the enemy knows if things take very long, you'll keep looking for answers and you may find the answers. So the enemy does not want you to find answers. No, the enemy wants you to be hooked at his deception. The enemy wants to hold on you. So what will the enemy do? When there's a crisis, the enemy will use demons, and those demons will use people to intensify your perception of the crisis. It doesn't mean that the crisis has become worse, but your perception of it becomes worse. For example, it can be that you don't have a job at the moment, and constantly you have this relative calling you, ask you why if you have a job yet, and that relative keeps talking about how people that you used to know do have good jobs and all of that. So you keep feeling worse after this relative calls you. What's going on? An unclean spirit is used an individual to intensify your perception of the crisis. You get what I'm saying here? So the enemy does this. The enemy uses people, and often those people are not aware that the enemy is using them. But it doesn't mean they're innocent. I mean, they're still responsible for allowing themselves to be used by dark powers. And they ought to evaluate how they're treating you to see whether it's right or not. They should do it that anyway. But okay, so the enemy will intensify your perception of the crisis. And once your perception of the crisis is intensified, you really want to be relieved from that crisis, which is understandable. Nobody can blame you. But then the enemy comes with his conmen, which will trick you into something that will be far worse than the crisis you're going through. But because you're being tricked, you don't see that it's going to be far worse. Okay, let's give an illustration. Let's say you're Jack and you have been unemployed for almost a year, and you think, oh dear, it should be over now. You are seeing all those happy couples out there going to restaurants, having dinner, some go on holidays, and you also see people purchasing new goods. All that you're bombarded with. And you have so-called relatives calling you, talking about how great your holiday was and all that, and you think, please, I want to stop. You've been filling applications every day for the past year because you really want to get employed, because you think this is a hell. You don't want another year like this, and nobody can blame you. But let's say now, okay, let's look at the bigger picture. You lost your previous job because, well, the company went bankrupt. So, really, and the bankruptcy happened instantly. So your boss wasn't even aware that this company was going bankrupt. So he couldn't help you anymore. And you've been applying since then. So you're in this situation and you keep applying and applying. Now, sooner or later, and I'm saying sooner, someone's going to say, come and work for us. Because you have good credentials. But now, because the enemy has intensified your perception of the crisis, by bombarding you with so-called good news of how people with jobs are having a so-called good life, I say so-called good life. I'm not saying people with a job can't have a good life. I'm not saying that. But in your case, the enemy is using your perception to intensify how you feel about the situation. As you're not aware, the enemy is doing it. So now you become so desperate you want the situation to change. Then, out of the blue, you receive a phone call. Someone wants you to come work for them. And you arrive over there. And boy, you get a high position immediately. Things just go off very quickly. And man, you're so relieved by it. It's like having a heavenly experience. Soon, you also have colleagues that hang out with you. So those other friends that left you because you didn't have a job, you totally forgot about them. You didn't even think about the betrayal anymore because you're not stuck in that unemployment situation anymore. So you think, whoa, everything's going great, praise the Lord. But hold on a minute. That job is a trap. First of all, you never applied for that job to begin with. You thought you applied for it because you've been sending so many applications, you even forgot where you applied, but you never applied for that job. And next thing, your credentials don't match the job description that you ought to do. So that already doesn't add up. And there are more things that don't add up, but just keep it at this. What happened? The enemy used people to trap you into worse. The enemy often does this. Yes, he comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but he doesn't come obviously. There are times the enemy will remove something that's bad from you, only to give you worse. But the worse he will give you will come as a beautiful package. And you'll be so overwhelmed by the good looking package because you remember the bad you had. And the bad is now removed. So you're so relieved, you're excited that the bad is gone. And now you have this new package over there, and it overwhelms you more. And you become so in love with this package. Whatever the package is, whether it's a job, whether it's a new church, or a new home, or a relationship, or new friends, or your own new business, or a business contract, whatever it is. But here's the catch. That package is just a distraction. Because that package is really a time bomb. You open the package, the bomb doesn't go off just like that. The bomb goes off like a minute later. But because you've opened the package and you see interesting stuff in the package, you don't notice that there's a hidden time bomb. So while you're going through those interesting objects in the package, less than a minute later, boom, you're dead. That is how the enemy operates. And I know that a time bomb of a minute is quite extreme, but this is a parable, and in this parable I use the illustration of a time bomb of less than 1 minute just to illustrate to you how the enemy works. And it's not only the enemy, human beings who are con men or con women do the same thing. Let's say in the parable of Jack, who finally got a job. 2 years from then, a new employee arrives at the workplace, and he and this new employee begin an affair. And it was a very intense relationship, but this affair led to Jack being incarcerated on false charges of rape, and the news was spread all around town. So now Jack's career is ruined by that one woman he got involved with, who was into witchcraft, that used him to get ahead in her career. Now, what happened here? Jack got from bad to worse, but the worse was preceded by a delay, by a time lag. And here's the thing, it wasn't uncommon for co-workers to date one another. So there was no crime involved in this. It often happened, but in this case, the individual that became interested in Jack had ulterior motives. But Jack, because Jack was so overwhelmed, not really overwhelmed, because he was so into the good times of him progressing in his career at the job, he did not notice that other individual had ulterior motives. And the enemy knew this about Jack. The enemy knew that once Jack has things going for him, Jack will be distracted by the things that are going for him. And then it will be easy to trap him and to snatch his life away. And that is what the enemy did. So Jack went from someone who was unemployed, not by his own fault, but he was unemployed, on welfare, looking for a job, to become someone that was in jail for a crime he did not commit. And now he faced a lot of backlash for a crime he did not commit. So his second situation was far worse than his first one. His first situation didn't even appear that bad after all when he was behind bars. Is that he realized that that job was a trap. Here's what happened. Jack wanted a final solution. And he got a final solution. But the final solution did not come from God. It did not come from Christ. The final solution came from the paranormal. Yes, the paranormal answered his prayer. And because Jack did not look at the bigger picture, first of all, Jack is a churchgoer on occasion, so he's not really in agreement with Christ at all. And because of that, he did not consider that maybe his unemployment was the result of him needing deliverance. Because Jack is a workaholic. He's so addicted to working, and that's bad for his health. And it's because Jack had everything going for him at the job and he was working so hard that he didn't realize that this woman he got involved with was a witch that would eventually destroy him. So that he didn't have a job was an opportunity for him to be delivered. But he didn't consider that at all. The only thing he was thinking, man, I need to get a job. I don't want to be overwhelmed by all those people having a good time because they have money, can afford stuff, and I'm just here on welfare. I can't stand this. He did not look at the bigger picture. He did not consider other perspectives on his situation. He was so narrow-minded. He did not have any perspective at all. And as I told in the beginning of this recording, when you lose perspective, you are in a very dangerous situation. Because you become suggestible to any deception. Okay, let me give a second illustration. I'll use a female example now. You have Clara. Clara broke up with her ex 3 years ago. She has been single since, and she really wants to get involved with someone else. She's really craving this intimacy, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural longing. But every guy she seems to make contact with eventually drops her. There is not even physical contact between them. It's just text messaging, meeting at cafes, but the guys just drop her just like that. The guys stop calling her, and the guys aren't even interested that much in sexual intercourse with her. The guys just, well, they just drop her. And Clara began to think, I'm a good looking woman, I take good care of myself, I do not brag about myself, I'm not a loud mouth. So according to Clara, there's nothing wrong with her. She began to think, okay, what's going on? Why are all those men dropping me? She went to psychologists for it because she was troubled by it. She was talking about it with her friends. She even began to think that maybe she was not over her ex. She even began to think that maybe there was some voodoo or black magic being done upon her. I mean, she was really desperate. But one day, this guy came by, who was a former fellow student of hers. They went to the same college, not the same education, but went to the same college. They never dated, they were just people that knew one another. They were acquaintances. Let's call this acquaintance Frank. Frank one day encounters Clara, and Frank asks how she is, and Clara may explain that she's miserable because she broke up with her ex 3 years ago, and she really is looking for someone else, but men keep turning her down. When Frank heard this, Frank was shocked. Frank was thinking, how could guys turn you down? I mean, from Frank's perspective, no man in his right mind would turn Clara down. So they talked with one another. Frank was married already, happily, so Frank was not interested in Clara. So Frank, when he arrived at home, he talked about his encounter with his wife. So the wife then wanted to see who this Clara is. So Frank went to social media, to LinkedIn, and showed it onto her. This is Clara. And the wife told him, Frank, do you plan to have contact with this woman? Frank looked at her and said, no, dear, I chose for you when I said I do, didn't I? Hey, I have no interest in cheating, dear. I mean it. And the wife told him, no, no, they're not talking about that. I know you're faithful. I know you mean it when you said I do to me. I'm just telling you, Frank, I got chills on my back when looking at the picture of this woman. I think she is possessed. And Frank said, dear, come on. You didn't even met her. The wife said, honey, trust me, that woman has something demonic with her. I can't put my finger on what it is, but there's really something wrong with her. Frank did not want to quarrel with his wife, so Frank thought, you know what, honey, let's stop talking about this. And by the way, I have no intention of keeping in touch with this Clara. I really don't. So, 3 weeks later, Frank encountered Clara again. This time, she passed by on her bicycle. First, Frank didn't recognize her at all. But when Frank noticed it's her, he noticed that she looked at him. But when he looked at her, she turned her face. So Frank was thinking, okay, if you see me and I'm not a stranger, why can't you just say hi? But then Frank felt some very heavy, weird presence around her. He totally forgot what his wife told him, but he still sensed this heavy presence around her. He just walked away. He didn't care. Then, about 2 days later, he receives a phone call. And let me enact it. Hello? This is Frank. And who are you? Good afternoon, sir. My name is Bob. Okay, Bob, Frank said. Why are you calling me? And Bob said, sir, are you dating Clara? And Frank thought, what? Who is this? But Frank remained polite. Sir, which Clara do you mean? And Bob said, you know who I mean. I used to be in the same classroom as yours during a science project. And Frank didn't think, and Frank asked him, which teacher did we have? And Bob said, Mr. Zimmerman. And it's then that Frank remembered who Bob was. And he said, oh, Bob, it's you. And Bob said, yes, it's me. Then Frank said, I'm sorry, man, I totally forgot about your voice. It has been almost 5 years ago, man. And Bob said, don't worry about it. Frank, I know you're married. So I'm just asking you, are you involved with this, Clara? And Frank said, nope. I don't intend to either. And Bob told him, Frank, one of my buddies used to date that girl. And he ended up in a psychiatric ward for almost 2 years. And Frank asked, huh? Oh, what? What's going on? What happened? And Bob told him, Frank, that Clara is not in her right mind. She functions. She wakes up every day, she goes to her job, she knows how to be polite, she knows how to watch the traffic signs, how to cross the street without causing accidents. She functions mechanically, but she is not in her right mind. She seems very polite and very well-mannered, even very kind and interested into you. But however, when her mind turns around, when she suggests something that ain't there, which she often does, she turns on you. Her ex-boyfriend, she beat the crap out of the guy. First 2 times the guy ended up in a hospital, but the guy thought we could work this out. The third time, she called the psychiatrist on him, and he ended up in a mental institution. Before that, she was with another guy, and that guy blocked her completely because she said some very weird, disturbing things that no woman in her right mind would say. Things like she wanted to take revenge on a cousin of hers because she was jealous or something like that. And when Frank heard all of this, he was shocked, but he was also interested. And he asked, Bob, I met her several days back, as you know. How do you know? And then Bob revealed onto him, Frank, she is complaining about you, that you are stalking her, that you can't get enough of her, that you really want to be with her. And Frank was thinking, what? I only encountered her once, coincidentally, at some cafe when I was passing by. I didn't even exchange phone numbers with her, nothing, because I had no interest in further contact. And Bob told him, Frank, she's a pathological liar. She will sell anyone out just to get validation and approval from other people. Haven't you noticed, or maybe you didn't notice it because you haven't been in contact with her often, but a lot of people noticed that often when she meets people, she tends to bring down. Eventually, when you are talking with her more often, she begins to bring down her exes, bring down family members, at the same time praising you. So that you will feel like you are someone very important to her, even though you only had contact twice or thrice, and the contact wasn't even that intimate. And then Frank said, well, Bob, you should know, and as I know also, that's a red flag when someone behaves that way, whether it's a male or female. And Bob said, correct, Frank. That's why I'm telling you, if she ever tries to contact you, whether through social media or just by phone call, don't pick it up, ignore it. Please, I'm telling you, Frank, you're happily married, you have your children, things are secure to you, don't allow that snake in your life, please. Because she will cost you your life. Now, this parable is different than the first one. In the first one, it was obvious what the final solution was that Jack was looking for. In the second parable, there are more figures. But about this Clara, she wants a final solution. But she does not want to face herself. Because she has serious issues and she has demons attached to her. But because she's not willing to evaluate herself, the enemy will always trick her into worse. So that time that all the men turned her down was really her opportunity to evaluate herself and to really look for help and to really look for deliverance. And in this case, unfortunately, she did not want to look at the bigger picture. She just wanted her loneliness to end and that everything goes well for her. Now, the guys that went on the dates with her noticed quickly that something wasn't right, even though they couldn't put a finger on it. And those guys, they listened to their inner alarm, which warned them for danger. Because your body doesn't warn you for danger just like that, especially if you never met someone. There was this one guy, however, who was a colleague of Frank, who fell for the charm. This colleague of Frank thought he got the jackpot. An attractive young woman with a career, was not needy for his money and was also interested in similar subjects as he is. Now Frank knew more about this Clara and who she was, but Frank never got the chance to explain to his colleague why she was bad news. And Frank did not want any trouble nor any conflict at the workplace, so he kept his mouth shut because he realized, I can't have a say here. Well, soon, very soon, this Clara was cheating on that guy with his brother. So now there was family conflict also. What was going on? A spirit of confusion was using this Clara to cause confusion and destruction in other people's lives. And she was complying with it, not consciously, because she wasn't aware it was an unclean spirit using her, but she complied nevertheless because she did not want to face herself nor look at the bigger picture. So she enabled a demon to work through her to cause destruction. And it's then that Frank understood the heavy presence he sensed around her that time in town when she passed by on her bicycle. Frank's wife sensed it immediately when she saw her picture. Now, that was the second parable. And another note here, do not let the gender of the fictional characters of the parables distract you. In both the first and the second parable, it was a female that brought destruction. That's not sexist, it happens in the world. But remember, the devil also uses men to bring destruction in people's life. He does it often. So for you ladies, just like Jack and Frank in these parables, I want you to look at the bigger picture. Jack did not look at the bigger picture. Frank did not notice that something was wrong instantly. Let me say, with the first one, Jack, it ended up very bad. With the second, it could have ended up bad. Well, for the ladies who have listened to this message, just like I tell everyone, look at the bigger picture. Alright? Because the enemy will use men to come in your life to meet certain expectations of yours, but it's only to trap you. He does it so often. Look, for everyone that's listened to this message, I just want you to be alert and aware. I'm telling you, stop looking for final solutions. You will have challenges during this lifetime. It will not be the same challenges all the time. The challenges may be different. Just do not opt for final solutions. I'm telling you, don't. It's a trap.